ama waxaan u malaynayaa haddee dadka badan oo isku dayay in communitygeena iyo jaaliyadda Soomaaliya inta Minneapolis ku nool inay kala qeybiyaan inay caawatan suurtagelisay oo annagoo dhan aan u soo wada baxnay in hal cod aan ku wada hadalno oo aan dhahno annaga haddii aan Soomaali nahay waan ka soo tagnay in la kala qeybiyo.
A few moments later.
That's right, Shayla. Jacob Frey has unofficially been re-elected as mayor of Minneapolis. Due to ranked choice voting, the winner wasn't immediately clear, but the city says they just finished counting in the past few minutes. After the first count, Mayor Jacob Frey had 42% of the vote. Senator Omar Fateh had 32%.
So I really never thought that we would be talking about this guy, Omar Fateh, ever again. But as I learned more about this story and the greater issue here, I decided it was simply too good to ignore. Because as you probably know by now, the radical Ilhan Omar endorsed Somali Socialist candidate who was running for mayor of Minneapolis on a platform of dismantling the police and rent controls. And I really could not tell you the rest because he genuinely spent about half the campaign not even speaking in English, catastrophically lost his election bid this week to the incumbent Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey. And I noted it at the time as a pretty strong referendum against the so-called progressive mandate, right? A bunch of the far left thinks that because Zoran Mondani managed to beat sorry and sucky Andrew Cuomo in a divided race, clearly now the far left is taking over America. But when you really look at it, outside of New York, where you had Cuomo basically handing him the election victory, a lot of these progressive and socialist and radical candidates actually did not do all so well. But it turns out, folks, there's a lot more to the story than that, because a postpartum study and breakdown of what really happened in this election actually finds that a large contributing component to Omar Fateh's defeat actually comes down to tribal clan warfare amongst the Somali people. In other words, basically an internal race war caused, ironically, the white guy to get reelected in this race. Because essentially Omar was part of one clan and the other Somali clan said, no, we don't like that clan. We're super racist against those people. And they voted against him. Which I have to say is hilarious and ironic on two different levels. First of all, it completely refutes this left-wing idea of pan-racialism, right? You notice through CRT, anyone remember that term, critical race theory, the racial Marxists, the racial communists, they have essentially tried to build this gigantic coalition of like non-white people against the white people, right? That's their version of the class war. So sometimes people ask, how can Zoran Mondani be pro-progressive and like LGBT and also pro-Islamist and jihadi at the same time? Well, it's very simple. The left-wing coalition is very contradictory on many levels. They're only united by, I should say, this shared resentment against Western civilization, white people, and Christianity. That really is all there is to it, right? Except the problem is that, inevitably, if the left ever took total power, you could expect what would happen next, right? They would all start fighting each other because their coalition is not really bounded by anything besides pure resentment. And on occasion, you do even get cases like this, right? Where before they even take power, the infighting amongst their totally disconnected people completely falls apart, right? The pan-minority identity, it turns out. Actually, a lot of minority groups really do not like each other, and we'll talk more about that. But that's on one hand. But I think, secondly, it further completely refutes this idea of the myth of immigration, right? Of the melting pot or assimilation, which is what we idealize both immigration in general and legal immigration to be. This idea that people are coming to America because they genuinely love it and they're going to blend into American society. And by the second generation, you're going to just get, card-carrying, flag-waving Americans. And then as it turns out, right, and I'm not talking about all, but generally, on average, it would appear here that a huge component of the Somali diaspora in America is not only not identifying as American, they're not even identifying as Somali. They're still and they're still living in the United States based on like their 2,000-3,000-year-old tribal blood feuds between each other. So that said, we'll tell you about this story here today. We'll again break down for you why the Somali race war actually caused the Somali far-left candidate to lose this election. First, though, guys, do us a favor. If you enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. That is the best way to support our work, and it also ensures that you can stay up to date with all of the latest news and coverage. And with that said, so as this guy here breaks down, and we'll kind of explain it even further here, a big reason why Omar lost is because a significant number of Somalis in Minneapolis did not vote for the ethnic Somali mayoral candidate, Omar Fateh, due to Fateh being part of the Daarood clan rather than the Hawiye. I don't even know if these are real words, but, you know, that is the case. Now, if you don't know much about the history or even modern state of Somalia, you know, it has never been a land that is a unified nation, right? It's always been kind of this disconnected group of different tribes, right? Clans that live amongst themselves, do their own thing. It's actually a major contributing factor as to why Somalia nowadays can't really stabilize, because it's not really a coherent or unified nation. And that's, of course, what you're seeing. But again, it turns out that even when these clans come to America, you would think, okay, there's very few Somali people in general in America. Maybe we should all unite and have this pan-racialism. No, right? They're living in Minneapolis, Minnesota, still having the same exact race feuds, right? So this deep-seated clan war allowed Mayor white guy Jacob Frey to rally community leaders from the Hawiye clan to hold off a challenge from Omar Fateh. Isn't that ironic? Representative Ilhan Omar, who endorsed Fateh and is part of that Daarood clan, is reportedly the next target of the Hawiye community leaders, as they are emboldened by their proxy victory over the Daarood in the mayoral election, and she may possibly face a primary challenge on tribal grounds. Now, if you don't want to believe me, if you think there's no way this is real, here are some Somali residents actually explaining that very issue for themselves. So take a listen.
Somalia will not prosper for the next 10 years because of what just happened in Minneapolis. A young Somali man that goes by the name of Omar Fateh was running for mayor of Minneapolis. He asked for his people to come out and support him, to vote for him, but instead they went and they danced with a white man. I would understand if their policies didn't match. I would understand if he just wasn't the right fit. Maybe he was just too young. But they did it because of tribalism, choosing a name that they've been tied to for the past hundreds of years, that have done nothing for them. Nothing. Omar Fateh was robbed by his people because they can't let go of the ways that ripped them from their own country. It's 2025.
You mean they can't assimilate? Very interesting admission.
We ask ourselves, why are the Somali youth involved in gang activity? Some people even have the gall to say that they're imitating the black community, when in reality they're only imitating their forefathers. If Somalia wants what's best for them, they will leave tribalism behind. We should cut our roots with our tribes, whatever weird-ass name that we have, and we should unite under the name of our country, not under the name of men who have unsettled beef because someone spilled sheh on them 50 years ago.
Look, I don't know if it's the official numbers yet, but Omar Fateh is losing the polls in Minneapolis. And looks like he's gonna lose, and the whole reason why he lost is because of his own people. I am Somali, and I can admit, bro, our people is the most divided people in the world. We are bringing this Qabilas thing to America. The same thing that killed our country, the tribalism, is what we're bringing to America, and it's affecting real world politics. And yes, I've done my homework on Jacob Frey. He's been the mayor for I don't know how long, he's been a mayor for some time. Whether you agree with Omar's political views or not, he wanted to bring change, and he believed in his people to back him. Jacob Frey, congratulations, you won fair and square, bro. Amazing effort by him. But to my people, you guys let a guy come into our community, drink shah with you, go to these cultural events, and then you guys got his vote.
Look, I know Omar won't say it, but I'll say it. I know he feels betrayed. You can't stay unified for shit, and it's hella sad.
Now, notice how even that first guy is not calling for the Somali community to unite on behalf of America. They're just simply saying, unite on behalf of Somalia, right? Because these people are far leftist, and they're essentially just saying, look, we need to come together in tearing down the West. And yet, even among the Somali community, they won't even agree on that because they're too busy trying to fight each other. And, you know, frankly, it is kind of ironic how so many leftists love to say that, oh, well, white people are so racist. White people are so bad. But if we want to be truly honest with ourselves, white Americans are probably the least racist people, and I mean this sincerely, I'm not saying it as a talking point, anywhere in the world, right? Because you look at like any other ethnic group, there's widespread like fighting amongst one another, right? They don't really like each other. Oh, you know, I'm like, look, I'm Vietnamese. Ask some Vietnamese person their opinion on, say, the Chinese and vice versa, right? That's how it goes. That's how it goes. Even the white Europeans who, you know, are oftentimes like left wing and they want to lecture Americans about racism. Hey, ask the average European person their opinion on gypsies, right? Like this stuff is actually very common. And it turns out essentially that, you know, the great irony is the white Americans are basically the only ones who on average do not live their life with this kind of viewpoint. And it's the very people they're trying to topple, you know? But anyways, with that said, I guess we finally do have an understanding of what Ilhan Omar was speaking about in this clip, because we played it before on the channel. She wasn't speaking English. I had no idea what was going on, but it turns out, yeah, this was her rallying with Omar Fateh, basically attacking her own Somali community because the clan that she was not a part of was attacking her and Omar. So take a listen.
qofka Soomaaliga ah waa qof cadow sare ah dadkaasoo kaleetana magaaladayna nool dhex nool yihiin waan aragnaa anagoo dhan qaar waxaa jiro aan dhahno qofkan wuu iska hadlaa micno ma leh kanina adeerkay waaye bidiis waxa dhihin waxaa laga yaabaa ka fishaabyaalkeen waa taqaaniin dadkan ka hadlaayo Starbucks ka la fadhiistinay masaajidka marmar inuu imaadana laga yaabaa xafladaha isla tagtiin waa taqaaniin dadkan ka hadlaa inuu guriga la deganahay waa aragtiin dadkaas iska qabta meel ma gaarin anaga Soomaali hadii aan nahay inta dadkaas ay nagu dhex jiraan oo aanan dhehaynin qofkaanaytii hana dhaafo dadka aan difaacna annaga kuwa annaga rabo maalin ilaahay keeno in xabsina la geliyo maalin ilaahay keeno been naga abuuro maalin ilaahay keeno video yaal af Soomaali aanan dhihin soo sheego waxba aan soo sheegnay oo meel hadhoodi aan ka galaysid male ileen maanta oo dhan ma taagnaan kartid ma dhihi kartid aniga hadalkan kuma hadlin because shaqaan noo taala anaga waa shaqaynoynaa idinka idin difaacoynaa waddankaanaan difaacoynaa sharciyo aan suubinoynaa maanta oo dhan kuma soo taagnaan karno videogaaneyti aniga hadalkan ma dhihin maanta oo dhan meel nala taagnaan karno taas idinka idin taala inaadan soo dhawaysanin dadkaas maalin ilaahay keeno ka shaqaynaya sida Soomaalida waddankan ku nool ay wax ku noqoneen.
It do be your own, don't it? It be your own people like that. No, but seriously, again, these are the people trying to overthrow white Americans, right? They want a Marxist race war. And they can't get over their own race war. And again, the irony of that, right? These are the people always calling white Americans racist. No, when you really break it down, white Americans are the most tolerant, welcoming, compassionate people on the planet. You could almost say to a fault, right? Because as a result, you have people like this essentially now trying to ruin them or attack them and do all these things, right? But, this is what's bound to happen if the left ever takes power. Oh, we got rid of the white man. So wonderful. What happens next? Oh, our country's going to collapse. That's what's going to happen next, right? It's going to be like Zimbabwe or South Africa, except even worse because the ethnic group that overthrew the white man, right, is not even unified. So, the jihadis are going to be fighting the LGBT progressives. The Somali clan of one side is going to be fighting the Somali clan of the other side. Black Americans are going to be fighting Latino Americans. It's like the great coalition you guys here have built. It's so coherent. It makes so much sense. Just like, oh my gosh. But that's America for you, right? Apparently, the immigration policy has decided it wants to import tribal clan warfare. And surely this is a very good idea. Now, that said, it is, again, worth noting that I would say he's smart for this, frankly. I'm not a big fan of BLM mayor himself, Jacob Frey. But I gotta say, it is objectively pretty funny how he managed to weaponize the clan wars and basically divide them against each other and then win the election. And here's him basically admitting that that's what he did on camera.
Assalamu alaikum. Habin wanaagsan. Magayega waa Yarub Farid. Duka magaalada Minneapolis. Ko laba sata. Afarshan.
And you see comments like this all over the internet, right? This guy is taking advantage of tribal politics. We are way too easy, from a presumably Somali guy right there. Shaksta Samalida Ayu Famia, whatever that's supposed to mean. This guy understands how to divide our people, right? And that's what he did. He successfully used the race war to divide people, which I gotta say, right? Again, not a fan of Jacob Frey at all. But it is objectively hilarious, you have to admit here, how the white man in the race basically successfully conquered a city full of a bunch of non-white people by dividing the tribes against each other, right? Like, I mean, he like, think about that for a moment. He used his colonizer ingenuity to say, he rode into a foreign land and said, we are widely outnumbered here. What do we do? Oh, let's provoke one tribe against the other tribe and use that together to conquer the city. Like, that is pure, guys, conquistador behavior, right? That is exactly how, if you don't know the history, the Spanish took down the Aztecs with like 300 men. It wasn't just them. They basically found all the tribes who didn't like the Aztecs, and then they rode on Tenochtitlan together. Same thing, by the way, in the Plains Indian Wars, right? With the British Empire, the French, even the Americans to some degree, right? They found tribes that liked them, used them against each other, and that adds to the numbers. So it's like, you can't make that up, right? That is white man behavior. The white man will always prevail. Oh my gosh. No, it's actually really funny. And, all this talk about how, the white people are screwed, we're going to topple white people, the West has fallen to leftism, all this stuff. Look, it's pretty telling to me, right? That even when you have a guy like Jacob Frey, okay, a white guy who's completely, left-wing, cucked, libtarded, whatever you want to call it, he still can't let go of his instincts, okay? The white man can never let go of his instincts to, conquer, colonize, outsmart the tribes. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. The colonizer, Jacob Frey, ladies and gentlemen. But, no, in all seriousness, that's just actually hilarious. But in all seriousness here, I mean, you see the comments now in reaction to what happened, all joking aside, in Minneapolis. And it should be, again, very concerning to people. You have, for instance, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis pointing out, how does importing ancient tribal blood feuds from halfway across the world into our country benefit the American people? Well, that's a good question, right? For so many Republicans, mass immigration, no matter from where, is quote unquote good so long as it's legal, brain dead thinking. And that's exactly what we've been trying to bring up as well, right? Is that, I saw, but that's the thing, is it's important to understand. The left wing is using migration as a political weapon. It's not to say that every immigrant is voting left wing or that every immigrant's not assimilating. But I saw a study, for instance, from like 6 years ago. I don't know how it compares today, but at the time, about 9 out of 10 legal immigrants were voting for Democrats. And you see stuff like this right here. Are there probably some Somalis in Minneapolis that actually assimilate and actually like America? Sure. But it's a pure numbers game, right? Especially in a quote unquote democratic system. That's what it's going to come down to. And en masse, the left wing are trying to import their voter base and ultimately maybe in the future, their base of true revolutionaries, okay? Now, sometimes it sort of hilariously fails, as you see in, Wokadishu, Minnesota here, but en masse, that is what's important to understand about this. And hopefully that's eye-opening, right? To this idea that, we're going to get people to assimilate. Well, as it turns out, when you're bringing over like so many people at once and, you also have to be cognizant of maybe the circumstances which they came, that's not always a realistic option, right? And despite all the comparisons to Ellis Island, I frankly don't think like the same thing is happening nowadays. It's a totally different immigration system, and the culture and the mindset and the mentality around it is not the same, right? I'm Vietnamese and Italian. That's my ethnic breakdown, okay? And I know for a fact in the 1900s, when my Italian ancestors came over here, they like changed the way they pronounced their name. They wouldn't even tell anyone they were Italian because, obviously at the time, right, that was kind of looked down upon or persecuted. But at the same time, it's also a sign of like, look, as Teddy Roosevelt said back then, the hyphenated Americanism thing is not going to work. Like, you need to identify as American if you're going to be here. And there's not to say there weren't problems with immigration back then, but overall, that was the mentality. Nowadays, right, you have these people, they're not even attempting to let go of the ancient customs of even the tribal warfare aspect of it. And even if they do, then it's like pan-Somalianism instead of pan-Americanism, right? That's who we're really advocating for. So that's a problem that needs to be addressed. And again, it's not to say that like every single immigrant is guilty of this, but it's a numbers game. The left wing set up the modern immigration system. Of course, they're going to be using it as a political weapon against the right wing. And I think en masse, right, that is what you are seeing. Matt Walsh as well points out that American elections are now being decided based on tribal blood feuds in Africa. And that's exactly what's going on, right? So it should obviously be cause for some concern. Now, I guess the outcome of the tribal blood feud in this case actually helped us, which is pretty funny. But like, you mean to tell me en masse you think that any of this that's happening is of actual benefit to America? You know, even the colonizer himself, Jacob Frey, is having to basically use his tactics of deception, okay, against the tribal groups to win elections. It's like, no, actually, you know, Minneapolis, Minnesota is a place with a lot of, the state of Minnesota as a whole, right? Place with a lot of history to it. It used to be the frontier before America expanded west and all that. And this is what it's become. You know, it's depressing, frankly. But that said, guys, let me know your thoughts on all of this in the comment section down below, right? What do you think of the race war actually making the progressive lose? Let me know. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new. And until next time, God bless and peace.